When I have taught confirmation in the past, well, not this past year because COVID, but before that, any of the confirmation classes that I would teach, I would go over Dietrich Bonhoeffer's 7 ministries with them. And we'd go through it throughout the whole year so that they would learn all of them by the end of the year. And I'm going to show you those 7 ministries now. The first ministry of Dietrich Bonhoeffer is the ministry of holding your tongue. And so I would actually have the students hold their tongue. And it's something that requires practice, learning how to hold your tongue and not say the first thing that comes out of your mouth. And for me, it's been a lifelong struggle. That's why I have to keep reminding myself. The second ministry of Dietrich Bonhoeffer is the ministry of meekness. And I always would tell the students that meekness is not to be confused with weakness. Meekness is restrained strength, when we hold back our strength to lift up someone else. And so the action that goes with the ministry of meekness is holding others up. The third ministry is the ministry of listening, and how powerful it is to truly listen to someone else's words and how that communicates value to them. The fourth ministry is the ministry of helpfulness. And so I would have students pat their neighbor on the back. And oftentimes, especially with boys, I would have to remind them not to hit their neighbors as hard as they could, but to helpfully pat them on the back and say, hey, how can I be helpful? The fifth ministry is the ministry of bearing. And that one is where I'd have them say, make a gurring sound and have their fingers be claws. The ministry of bearing with one another. The sixth ministry is the ministry of proclaiming. And we would make our fingers into a cross because that reminds us to proclaim Jesus in our words and actions. And then the seventh ministry is the ministry of authority, where we remember that all authority belongs to God, and any authority that we do have comes from God. So we would go through these 7 ministries or 7 disciplines every week, and I would have the students just rattle them off rapid fire. And if they ever got hung up or forgot the 5th one, I would say, come on, you guys, it's my favorite one. And they'd be like, oh yeah, bear with one another. And it is my favorite one. And the reason it's my favorite one, as I would explain to the students, is that we all need to realize that we're all annoying in our own special way. And we all are asked to put up with one another because each one of us are annoying in different ways. Now, putting up with one another is the bare minimum of bearing with one another. But bearing with one another is so much richer and harder and fuller than that. It's a challenge, and that's why it's my favorite. When we bear with one another, more than just tolerating each other, we engage one another's differences. We start to understand why people think differently or act differently than we do. We can start to understand each other's struggles, and we can bear each other's burdens. And we can also just learn how to be patient with someone who's just going to be different and do things differently than we would. It's a valuable skill in creating community. Today, we are focusing on bearing with one another, and it is part of our sermon series called One Another. These are 2 words in English, one another, but in Greek, it is one word. And Jesus instructs us to one another each other in powerful ways so that we can create a strong and healthy and thriving community of Jesus followers that is welcoming to all people.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. Precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood rains unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me, His word my hope secure.